Good evening. Nearly a year ago, a change in border policy sent a surge of migrants to Arizona's southern border. Since then, communities all across the state have been grappling with a crisis. Thanks for joining us tonight for 12 News at 6. I'm Mark Curtis.
And I'm Kariba Devine. 12 News has team coverage of the lasting impact of the crisis and a look at where things stand right now. 12 News journalist Brenda Lipinski has been reporting in Nogales for the last few days. But we want to start with 12 News Today and AZ anchor Allison Rodriguez, who is in Yuma right now. Allison?
Good evening, Caribe and Mark. That's right. We are here near the Morelos Dam. And the biggest difference in the last year, I can tell you, is migrant encounters happening here. They are drastically down. Now, who could forget those images from a year ago? Mark, you yourself were out here as our 12 News cameras were rolling, seeing hundreds of migrants crossing through gaps here in the border wall. Today, many of those gaps have been filled, but that does not mean that encounters are not happening at all in this sector.
It was a lot of a roller coaster ride.
For Jonathan Lines, he's glad for that ride to be slowing down. He's the vice chairman of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors.
Nobody understood necessarily what would happen with the end of Title 42.
One thing Yuma leaders like Lines and Mayor Douglas Nichols hoped would come true did.
We've seen the steady decline up until kind of a plateau after Title 42.
According to CBP data, agents in the Yuma sector had roughly 117,000 encounters the last fiscal year. That number is closer to 34,000 since October, a major drop. But Chief Patrol Agent in the Yuma sector, Doug McGuffin, says agents are just as busy as ever.
We've actually processed more people from other sectors than we've actually apprehended.
Encounters and apprehension numbers have dramatically increased in the Tucson and San Diego sectors.
So that was an interesting dynamic because prior to Title 42, when we were at 1,300 people a day, it was working the other way, where we were actually pushing people to be processed into Tucson, into the Phoenix areas.
The tents that were set up here at Border Patrol headquarters in Yuma at the height of Title 42 to help with processing are still here 1 year later. And they're not going anywhere. Roughly 41,000 people have gone through those tents since October. And Chief Agent McGuffin says he's coming down hard on those caught human trafficking.
Our smuggling cases are up this year, even though our apprehensions are down.
One of the places Border Patrol agents are still encountering migrants is near tribal lands. That's because you can't build there. So you'll notice here the border wall ends abruptly, separating the San Luis, Arizona side from the Cocopah Reservation. And speaking with people who cross the border back and forth in San Luis, Arizona, they say many migrants are in Mexico, waiting on the other side for their immigration appointments. But it is a heartbreaking scene.
They're staying there with kids, sometimes they don't have food or nothing. Nobody cares to help them. And it's a sad situation, and I don't know, I wish that somebody could do something.
A reminder, even though we may not see the crisis so obvious like we did a year ago, it is far from over. Now, to bring you up to speed here, Title 42 was that pandemic-era policy that allowed the U.S. government to keep migrants in Mexico who were seeking asylum. Now, that ended a year ago. And since then, there's been a change to the approach to border policy. 12 News journalist Joe Dana is now looking at those changes and seeing if they're really working.
The amount of voluntary surrenders at the border remain at an incredibly high level. Though, to be fair, it's difficult to know how much higher those numbers might be if these policies by the Biden administration were not in place.
More justice, more mercy. That's the new approach to the southwest border. The Biden administration has put into place stricter punishments for illegal border crossers and created new pathways for migrants to apply for asylum while they stay in their home countries. The result? Take a look at the southwest border land encounters by month since the lifting of Title 42. It hit a peak of 302,000 in December. Compared to the previous year's totals and compared to the year before that, apprehension rates are up overall. The majority of migrants are returned to their home country or expelled. But for those who qualify to apply for asylum, the backlog is growing. According to a Syracuse University database, the average wait for asylum seekers in Arizona is 984 days. In Utah, it's 1,200 days. In Florida, 1,400. One area of improvement, closing border gaps. When I spoke with Yuma County Supervisor Jonathan Lines last summer, Lines said Homeland Security had personally assured him they would close 9 gaps near Yuma. They had only closed 1.5 during our visit.
What are they telling you?
They're working on it, you know.
Since then, 8 of 9 gaps have been closed, including a stretch where then Governor Doug Ducey famously planted shipping containers. Closing gaps allows Border Patrol to better concentrate their efforts. Improvements to security, yes, but a massive flow of migrants continues, day after day.
Now, the remaining gap in Yuma here is no small task. We're talking 8 miles long, and we did reach out to the Department of Homeland Security about the timetable of closing it, but so far we have not gotten a response yet. Now, 12 News does have crews across our southern border covering this for you, not only here in Yuma, but over in Nogales, Arizona as well. It's another border city that offers a unique perspective because it is tied very closely to its Mexican sister city, Nogales, Mexico. And that's where we sent 12 News journalist Brenda Lipinski to see a little bit more about the differences that we've seen in the last year and how this community is uniquely handling those struggles.
Thanks, Allison. Well, since Title 42 has ended, Santa Cruz County has had to collaborate with other counties. And while more migrants continue to cross the U.S.-Mexico border, the need for resources gets greater.
From early in the morning
Thank you. Wish you the best.
to late at night, migrants from all over the world
De Cuba. Haití. Venezolano.
cross the Nogales border to seek asylum.
Now this year, the encounter that we have had from January to April is around 31,000.
Zobeida Castro is the Director of Emergency Management in Santa Cruz County and says they were called to help direct migrants to resources months after Title 42 ended last year, something they had never done before.
We learned from scratch from the beginning. We had no location, we had no guidance. We were out on the streets.
Right now, an organization called Casa Alitas is guiding migrants who have made that dangerous journey to the U.S.
We crossed through Colombia, Panama, and also the Darien jungle, and we stayed there 3 days.
Seeking opportunity and freedom.
There's lack of freedom, and you cannot express your thoughts because you could wind up in jail.
Migrants typically don't stay in Nogales overnight, and that's because the county and city don't have the resources.
Overall, shelters are very important. The city of Nogales and Santa Cruz County, we do not have any. I truly believe that that is an asset that we currently need within the county.
Pima County collaborates with Santa Cruz County to help make all this happen. Migrants one step closer to reaching their destination.
Thank God that God protected us, saved us from danger, and we are here, hoping for the best.
And the county working to do what they can to meet their needs.
At the end, this is a federal issue, and we need help not only with assistance, but also seeing the overall picture of the impact that happens within a rural community.
Now, we're told that Santa Cruz County could be coming into some grant funding, and how they'll use that money will all be dependent on how many migrants are coming in. Allison?
Brenda, thank you so much for that unique perspective. What a difference, since I spent time there last year, and today it's basically the opposite of what's happening now here in Yuma County. But coming up in 30 minutes, we are going to speak more with those who live here, talking about how the border crisis really impacted the economy here, talking about one of the biggest drivers, agriculture. Plus, we have just learned some new information about some relief that could be coming here to the county as well. We'll go over that again in about 30 minutes. But I want to bring in Mark Curtis now in on this conversation because, Mark, you were here just a year ago in the same place that I was, and boy, what a difference it has made now this last year.
Yeah, Allison, communities like Yuma are literally at the intersection of national security and a humanitarian emergency. But this is an emergency that didn't happen overnight. It was born in Washington, where lawmakers haven't been able to come up with a substantive. And any talk of new legislation gets batted back and forth like a tennis ball between Republicans and Democrats. What's the sentiment down there about the gridlock in Washington when it comes to immigration reform?
Well, they definitely feel that, Mark. I know a lot of the leaders who I spoke to here want to work with those across the aisle from them who have different political beliefs because they know this is what's best for the community here. But of course, they're just one small piece of this puzzle. The bigger solution here, they say, is, of course, comprehensive border reform that would need to happen out of D.C. But at this point, the way Congress is somewhat at a gridlock, they just don't see that happening right now. They say at this point, they've gotten used to what they call the ebbs and flows of migration numbers here in a place like Yuma.
Yeah, and why are so many migrants being shipped to Yuma as opposed to being processed in a bigger city that may be able to better handle some of these or more people?
It's interesting because, yes, Yuma is such a smaller city, but at the height of when Title 42 was coming to an end, at the height of the border crisis, they had to set up infrastructure quickly, and they were able to do that, and they did a good job. So now they have that infrastructure in to process many migrants, and as the encounters have slowed down here in this sector and have risen, really spiked in neighboring the Tucson sector, but also in the San Diego sector here, they just have the infrastructure, and that's why they're all being sent here. But as I mentioned earlier today, I did speak with the Chief Border Patrol agent. He says his agents are willing to do the job as long as they need them to, as far as switching into those roles of processing migrants here.
All right, it's been a year and some things have changed and some haven't. Allison, great job down there. Thanks.
Right.
And 12 News has continuing coverage of the crisis at Arizona's southern border. You can watch the coverage tonight on 12news.com as well as online at 12news.com and the free 12 News app.